This is Jazmir Tucker. His family and friends called him Jazz. And last Thursday, while many of us were celebrating with our families, spending time with loved ones, Jazmir was shot and killed by Akron police. He's dead and he doesn't have to be. Now, I'd like to introduce to my right, Jazmir's mother, Ashley Green, and also to my right, his great aunt, Connie Sutton. My name is Robert Gresham with the Cochran Firm. I'm here with Stanley Jackson, also with the Cochran Firm. We'll be representing the family along with our partners, Michael Wright and Sean William in this case. Now, while I'm here as an attorney, I can't help but separate myself from being a father, because it puts me in the place where this family is of losing a child. No parent should ever have to bury a child. No parent should ever have to outlive their child, especially when it's unavoidable. Excuse me, especially when it's avoidable. And what can't be lost here is Jazz, he was a child. He's 15 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. Now, last night, the city of Akron finally released the body camera footage, which they are legally obligated to do so at the last minute. Now, we're left with more questions than answers, as we often are in these cases, but a number of things are disturbing and stand out. First thing is, these officers clearly engaged Jazz with aggressive intent. Why do we know that? Because of the use of assault rifles. And I appreciate the mayor's statement with respect to this shooting and the addressing of that particular aspect of this case, because unfortunately, this is the culture of Akron police in this city. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised by this culture, because the city just got finished experiencing a case in the Jayla Walker case where 8 officers were exonerated by the police department and released back into the public. So we can't be surprised that we're now here after that aggression has now resulted in the loss of a young man's life. The Akron Police Department had a total disregard for the humanity of Jazz. They failed to provide timely aid, which is in direct violation of their own use of force policy. Their own use of force policy says that the preservation of human life is of the highest value. That's what their policy says. That's what they say is one of their principles. Part of our investigation will be aimed at addressing a number of these questions and more. Now, there's a problem with Akron PD. And like I said, we appreciate the mayor's statements and comments, but respectfully, this family wants results. We want accountability, and we want them to deal with the consequences of their actions for the officers involved. This city failed to hold officers accountable in the Walker case, and now we're here. These two things are they're not unrelated. What the city has done historically matters, and what the city has done historically has resulted in where we are today. Driving around, hopping out of cruisers with assault rifles and gunning down 15-year-olds is not protecting and serving. And that's what police are here for, supposedly, to protect and serve. This family is devastated, and it's forever changed, and no parent, like I said, or family member should ever have to recover from losing a child. So as their attorneys, we will continue to fight for this family. We will seek truth and we will find justice. And we would ask that the community support this family. Now, as far as next steps, which I know is usually a question, this family seeks full transparency and cooperation from the city of Akron in response to the family's questions and requests for information. The mayor has put out a statement indicating he wants answers to those questions. Well, this family does too. So what we don't want to happen in this case is what happens in these cases traditionally, is the city standing in the way of getting the answers to those questions via public records requests. So Mayor, if you're standing by your statements, lead this city in giving this family answers. His family wants to push for a full criminal investigation and charges if and where warranted. And finally, a full audit and review of Akron Police Department practices and procedures. And candidly, that's just the beginning. And at this time, like I said, we would ask that everyone support this family, keep them in your thoughts, and help them continue to support this fight for justice for Jazz. This time, I'm going to pass the stage to my co-counsel, Stanley Jackson, and he'll fill in the rest of the case.
So, you guys know Jazz was a young 15-year-old boy with his whole life ahead of him. Ashley Green, his mother, loved him. He loved his mother, he loved his family. His family's here with him. On the night that he died, he spent his time with his family, doing things that 15-year-old kids do. Love eating food, hanging out, playing games. He should not have had to die like this. It's only because the Akron Police Department and the mayor did nothing after Mike Jones' death, after James Walker's death. They knew that they had an issue with their police department. They knew they needed training. We can go back to prior statements on October 21st that the mayor made that they needed training. And because they didn't do so, Jazz lost his life. Assault rifles. When is it appropriate to have assault rifles chasing 15-year-old kids walking to his brother's house that night? His brother had to witness, his older brother had to witness and hear his younger brother shot and killed. Jazz was trying out for the basketball team, ready to play at Akron North, had his whole life ahead of him. This is a tragedy. This lays at the mayor's feet. Don't ask questions that you should already have answers to. Don't front stage and ask questions to things that you have the power to change. You should have done so. And we are here. And Jazz's death is on the mayor's hands. Don't ask questions about something that you have the power to change. You know that your police department is in shambles. You know that the DOJ needs to be investigating your police department. You know that you should be, at this point, under a consent decree prior to Jazz's death. We're going to do everything that we can, and we're going to investigate this ourselves, as the Cochran Firm normally does. As you very well know, we're a civil rights firm started by Johnny O. Cochran. We will make sure that this family gets the answers they deserve. And as my co-counsel said before, we shouldn't have to wait for those answers. We shouldn't have to wait for those answers. If you're going to be transparent and you're going to hold press conferences and try to answer questions, or at least be available, you need to answer questions to this family immediately. We shouldn't be here. You know we shouldn't be here. Everyone, the family, and the community is hurt. This is unacceptable. Officer Fields should have not been out there. We know, we've done our research, we know that Officer Fields was involved in a shooting 2 years prior. We know that he didn't, or any of the other officers, didn't render aid for 10 minutes. You've watched the video. That's an eternity. This young man's life mattered. These officers and the police department and the mayor are a complete failure. A complete failure to us, the citizens, to the community, and to their own profession. At this time, Ms. Sutton will tell you a little bit more about her nephew. She loved him. She shared time with him.
Before we do that, I failed to introduce the rest of the family. Just generally, we have a number of his family members, cousins, grandma, siblings, his twin brother, Amir is up here as well. This, as you can see, this has impacted this family significantly. I just wanted to make sure I made that introduction. So.
Jazz was the sweetest person you ever wanted to meet. He was always there whenever any of us called him. And when he finished with what he was done with, he'd always ask every single time, Is there anything else you need me to do? And it's just a great loss. Jazz was my sweetheart. He was with us at my house always, from the time he was a baby. And there was nothing he wouldn't do for anybody. And I miss him.
Miss Ashley Green, Jazz's mother, she's here today. It takes a lot of strength to be here, losing your child on a day that was supposed to, on Thanksgiving. And she's going to remain strong, but she wants you guys to know. She's going to speak to you in a moment about her beloved Jazz with one Z.
This morning was really hard for me, but I looked outside and Amir's shoveling snow by himself, which normally, like this time of year snow, Amir and Jazmir, they would be the first ones up, making sure that we could get outside to our cars. They would clean them, start them up, everything for us. We didn't even have to ask. It was like he already knew, what we needed, and he was there for us, just kind, loving, funny kid. And I'm gonna miss him, and we want answers. I love him. And his brother. Pray for Amir.
At this time, we'll accept questions. Obviously, some legal questions. We prefer you direct towards the attorneys, and you can ask questions of Mom and if they're willing to answer.
First, could we just have the spelling, Ashley, your name?
My name? Ashley.
Green,
Yes,
standard?
green, like the color, yes.
No E.
Correct, no E.
Looking at the incident, looking at the footage, I know that's extremely difficult. Probably, you want to do something while you're watching that, but there's nothing you can do, you feel helpless. After watching that footage and just seeing how long it took for the officers to approach Jazz and render aid, it's got to be the hardest thing about the whole thing. From a mother's perspective, what are your thoughts on that? How stricken are you by that?
Extremely hurt that I couldn't help my baby. It hurt me to see that no one helped my baby.
Do you think that that's the biggest failure in this whole incident right there? Obviously, there's many layers to this, but what do you see as the biggest failure in this by the police department?
I'll speak to that. There are a number of failures here with respect to the Akron Police Department. And the biggest failure, as Attorney Jackson indicated earlier, is that this city and this mayor did nothing to appropriately address these issues before we got here. In this specific case, from what we've seen in the body-worn camera footage, sure, yes, absolutely, the failure to render aid is something that should have been done in this case. It's in their policy. That's also in their use of force policy. There were a number of tactical issues in this particular case. The police department did a number of things tactically wrong in this case, starting with the aggressiveness that they initiated this pursuit with. These officers came out with the intent to do one thing, shoot and kill. And that's evidenced by the assault rifle they used. And that's problematic. Now, unfortunately, you guys have seen the footage. At this time, it's hard to determine what exactly occurred before the shooting, but part of our investigation will include addressing that footage. We will take a look at it, and in the event that we have additional information, we will certainly make that available. But there are a number of issues here, but what I perceive to be the biggest issue here is there's a culture of violence in this particular police department. There's an issue here. There's a problem here, and this police department needs to be addressed. It needs to be reviewed, and things need to change yesterday.
Some
To
questions?
add to that really quickly, the mayor and the police department weaponize the police by allowing them to carry assault rifles, right? And then the police department weaponizes Jazz's skin in his youth. That's the problem. You give someone a high-powered rifle, and then they're not properly trained, and there's a culture to assault and kill black males. That's the tragedy.
Mr. Reed and Ms. Sutton, I'm sorry for your loss. This happened on Thanksgiving. What do you remember about earlier in the day?
We were all at my grandmother's house. Jazz was with me. We were over there laughing, having a good time, eating, like we normally do, like everybody normally does on Thanksgiving, just with our family, having a good time.
Now, obviously, when something like this happens, you get thrust into the media spotlight, even if you don't want to. Will you talk about what you want the biggest takeaway to be from this story and Jazmir's life?
Jazmir was a great kid. He was still a baby. He was loved by everybody, and we're always going to remember him and the great things he did for everybody, and we're always going to miss him because he put a smile on everybody's face.
What I would say from meeting this family and representing this family, Jazz's presence can be felt. You can still feel it. What was left behind, but the love that this family still has for him, who he was as a young man, young boy, soon to be a young man. He's a jack of all trades, it sounds like. Did a lot of different things, did more things than a lot of grown men I know do for their family. He had a bright future ahead of himself. But unfortunately, he doesn't have the ability to achieve that future now because of the Akron Police Department.
I'm so sorry for your guys' loss as well. I know you had mentioned some details about how he was walking to his brother's house and leading up to the shooting. Is there anything else that you can share about that?
No, there's no additional details at this time. If there's additional details, I'm sure those will come out, but that's the information that's available now.
You mentioned that, hi, my name is Kimberly with Spectrum News. I'm very sorry for your loss. You mentioned that his brother either heard or witnessed the shooting. Is he willing to talk about that?
I don't believe it's his brother that's here. I mean, it's his older brother that's not present.
This is a difficult question to ask, and forgive me in advance, but Jazz had a weapon on him. I have to ask, was that something he carried regularly for protection due to the violence in Akron, or are there any details of why he had that gun and whose gun that was?
Yeah, we won't speak to that necessarily, because what's important here is that by all accounts and the evidence we have before us, these officers had no idea he had a weapon on him based on where they found it. So from our perspective and from a legal perspective, at this time, considering the officers don't appear to have known about it, it's not relevant to what's going on here. So that's all we'll say to address that particular question.
Have you heard anything from the police department about the shell casings that they had found and if that had matched the gun that he had on him?
Yeah, well, if they will respond to our public records request and give us the findings of their investigation, we'll probably have answers to those questions. But we are conducting our own investigation to get answers to all those questions. So we would ask for you also to lean on the city to get that information as well. Because like I said, oftentimes in these cases, the city stands in the way of the information and the truth. And the media oftentimes is the way for us to get those answers. So some of that is a responsibility as well. Help this family get answers, and we'll do everything we can as well.
Let's be frank, Jalen Walker, Mike Jones, passed, community gave support, mayor did nothing in response. We can't do the same things we did before and expect a different result. So we need you guys in the community to be vigilant and relentless in getting information, as we will be, but also results, meaning a swift prosecution and or investigation in these officers. You know, swift, immediate accountability, right? So that we don't have, so we're not here with another family. Jazz, when we ask that question, Jazz is my son, your nephew, your brother. A 15-year-old kid.
Forgive me for not knowing this. Has he already been laid to rest? Has he already had a funeral? Is that something that is coming up?
It's coming up, and we will let you guys know on the particulars of that. But he has not been laid to rest yet.
You've spoken a little bit about the type of kid that he was, and I'm curious if he started to develop any ambitions for adulthood. What direction did he want his life to go as he grew as an adult?
Just basketball. He loved doing everything for everybody, spending time with his younger siblings, nephews, but go to college and play basketball. But he was just very hands-on. He liked to do anything to try to fix anything, work on a car, at 15 years old.
Imagine a young kid in Akron aspiring to be a basketball player, change the world. LeBron James. He made it out. Jazz didn't.
I know you are waiting for the public records request, of course, but just from your perspective, when police showed up to your door, or however, you found out this news, was there anything that they said to you in terms of like any details at all that you're able to share with us?
No, they didn't. The police never addressed us. I had to find out that was my son through social media. And I called, and 2 hospitals didn't get any type of help, assistance. They forwarded me to the next person. And even the Akron Police Department, I was on hold. They asked me questions about him. But no one ever came to me. I came to them.
Can I ask about the number of times he was shot? The audio was not working, obviously, and I'm just visually counting on the body camera. I believe it was 7, perhaps 8, somewhere around that. Based on autopsy that you guys perhaps have seen, do you know how many times he was hit?
We're waiting on the official autopsy findings, but it was in multiple times.
And just looking at that, seeing that these rifle rounds are the ones that were fired, and again, back to the time to render aid, are there any excuses that would justify that in your eyes?
No. What needs to be remembered here is that, and I tried to point this out earlier, the police are here to serve the community. They're not an occupying force. This isn't a situation where police just come in and terrorize communities. Unfortunately, that's the reality of being black in America and black communities. But that's not what they're here for. They serve at the pleasure of the community, and they're here to serve and protect. And the use of an assault rifle in those circumstances is absolutely unacceptable. It tells you the intent of the officers, of what they plan to do, what they intended to do at that time. It signals an intent for aggression. And that is the problem with law enforcement in Akron. That's the problem with law enforcement in Ohio. And candidly, that's the problem with law enforcement across this country, especially when it comes to black and brown people in this country.
Ms. Remus, what was it like for you watching the video?
Devastating. It was like I was watching somebody play Call of Duty.
Ms. Sutton, what about for you?
The same, because I know Jazz is not gonna try and hurt anybody. That's not the type of person Jazz was. He was always there to help, not to try and hurt anybody.
To your question earlier, watch the video again. 10 minutes. They're within a few feet of him. He's not moving. That's intentional. 10 minutes. That means you have no regard for that young man's life. That means you don't see him as human. You don't see that you have the obligation, the human obligation. your oath as an officer to assist someone, to assist this young boy who was laying there that you shot. 10 minutes, that's a long time. It's agonizing that they had to watch it, right? But we see it again. I'm sure you can look through plenty of police cases throughout the country. 10 minutes might be the record. That's a very long time before you even attempt to render aid. And when they did touch him, they searched him after they cuffed him. They didn't try to help him.
When you talk about those, when you talk about those public records requests, will you kind of explain your biggest questions here, what you're trying to learn through those?
We want to, well, generally, we want to know what these officers knew, what they were responding to. We want the training records of these officers. We want the disciplinary records of these officers. Specifically, the officer who was allowed to utilize a personal assault rifle on this scene. And we want general, and there's a lot of the general information we want. We want the internal administrative findings, if those are conducted and completed within a timely basis. And we want all the investigation tied to this particular shooting. And that's just a start.
And what are your thoughts on the city's decision not to release the officer's name?
As I think in most of these cases, I think it's cowardly. If you conducted yourself in a way that you believed in, you'd stand on it. If you believe in what you did, you stand on it. Keep that same energy. But they don't believe in what they did here. And they know they messed up. So that's why you don't know what these officers' names are right now.
I wanted to send my condolences to the family of Attorney Jackson. I know you mentioned it was Officer Fields. Is this the same Devin Fields that was in the jail in Parker shooting 2 years ago?
Yes.
You're saying that Fields was the person, the officer with the assault rifle who shot Jazmir?
We've done our research. We have reason to believe that that is the officer. But the mayor can confirm that. It's the mayor's job to do that. But we are going to be aggressive in getting information that we need to make sure that this family has answers.
Ashley, just one more time, if you could tell us how you want your son to be remembered. Obviously, you said he was a light and caring person, very kind, but just one more time, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us how you would like your son to be remembered, because these last images are horrific.
Just loving, caring, genuine, respectful. A baby, my baby. Happy.
The same. He just is a kind person. He wasn't some thug on the street or anything like that. Jazz was genuinely respectful, helpful, kind, loving.
And funny.
Yes, and funny. And funny.
And remember, Jazz is a twin. Mirrors his twin brother, his other half. He has a host of siblings, 7 siblings that love him. Mom and dad, whole family who love him. Community that loves him. You know, obviously Akron North. I mean, he was only there for a few months in high school, but you know, he was, you know, one of the treasures of that high school, and one of the future kids who were gonna, you know, change the world like LeBron James. His life was cut short.
And Ms. Green, has the mayor reached out to your family?
No.
What's next at this point?
Yeah, like I said, what's next is we'll continue our investigation. We'll continue to seek the official answers from the investigation. And again, we're calling on the mayor to stand by his statement about getting answers to those questions. We would ask you all to go down to the city hall and hold him accountable as well. Because he said he wanted answers. We appreciate his statement. But they need to provide those answers. Don't stand in the way of this family and the truth. They've gone through enough. They don't need to go through more with the city standing in the way of answers to why their son, their nephew, their brother, their cousin is dead. So, thank you for coming out. I know the family appreciates you giving them the opportunity to speak. Everybody have a safe drive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the light wags.